Hi, I'm Nico Savage, and I'm gonna do my person on John Adams. And what I'm gonna go over is some journals and letters to Abigail Adams, and I didn't realize there was that many online. There's a ton, and then I'm gonna go over some of the challenges he faced and some solutions to those challenges, and just talk some stuff that happened in his presidency with Jefferson and how he dealt with that, and so there's a lot on him, and it'll be interesting. So he was born on 1735 in Massachusetts, and he dies on 1826. But so he ends up becoming the first vice president, and he is the ends up becoming the second president of the United States following Washington. But a interesting fact was out of the first five presidents, he's the only one that was not from Virginia. So that was just an interesting thing. So he ends up um, growing under a very strong religious family that are Puritan, and his dad's a minister. And religion is just built in his entire life. And he had the opportunity to become a minister when he was older, or as he got older, and he had no desire to do that. So at age 16, he goes to Harvard, study, and he does that, and he ended up doing so well, and ended up doing so well that people noticed how good of a student he was and admired him, and they wanted him to teach at school in Worcester, is what it is. And he ends up doing that. And obviously, his political career is just with a lot of events he did and participated in. But so, what did I want to talk about was some of the challenges, and I want to go over the XYZ affair. And I thought that was a very interesting thing that occurred during his presidency with France, and what was going on with France sinking the United States merchant ships, and how he wanted to resolve this and take care of this. And what he does is he sends Elbridge and John Marshall to France. And in Europe, it's accustomed that, and it's very culturally accepted over there, that in order to have a formal meeting, that they requested money and a loan to have before anything's even talked about, even before anything can be discussed as far as like a treaty with the United States. So he originally asked Thomas Jefferson and his friend, and Thomas Jefferson said absolutely not. It wanted nothing to do with it, and that didn't happen because he knew some of the stuff that would go on if he did go there, and it would embarrass. And Jefferson knew that it would really hurt his reputation as far as a politician. So they go over there, and these France officials, the three of them, asked for about $250,000 and then a $10 million loan before anything. And this gets back in that they ended up paying the bribe, and it gets back to the United States, and people are just going absolutely nuts about this. That this is so disrespectful that there couldn't just be a formal meeting without money involved or any monetary value placed on this meeting. So that's going really bad, and John Adams is struggling what to do, and what he ends up doing, and this is actually funny because what he did in the Revolutionary War was he was also in France negotiating, but this was for aid for the Revolutionary War, and he was there with Benjamin Franklin, and they ended up becoming a pivotal part in France aiding us in the Revolutionary War. So what's he do? He ends up sending his son John Quincy Adams there, and that really just was, I guess, John Quincy managed to not only not have pay a dime there, but had the French replace all of the ships that they sunk, and that's just one thing that it didn't go so well as far as the XYZ like on his presidency, but he ended up overcoming it by sending his son there, and then so that was the way he handled it. I thought that was great as far as sending his son, but originally Thomas Jefferson not helping didn't didn't do him any service. So what as far as Thomas Jefferson goes, those two have a friendship, and they disagree on a lot of things. And honestly, I really dislike Thomas Jefferson after reading about some of the things he would say about John Adams, and I thought that was just ridiculous. So what their big disagreement was on that John really enjoyed being or John John was more of a federalist. He wanted a strong central government, and Thomas wanted a more lenient, more of a people's government. And obviously, coming from just off the Revolutionary War and signing the Declaration of Independence, that Americans would be more susceptible to want less government control, and that was a big thing they got into, and that's how their friendship ends, or for some point at over the 12 years they don't speak to each other or anything like that. So I think that disagreement was just they handled it very well at first, and then Thomas Jefferson ended up becoming very hateful towards it and ended up really hurting Adams's feelings and just trashed his name in the newspapers in public, and I thought that was just terrible on it. And another issue that John kept on facing is that he was trying to help the Federalists, but Alexander Hamilton wasn't really helping with that. And then he tried being on the good side of the Democratic Republicans, and that wasn't working either. So he was really in a really big pinch between both sides wanting opposites, and he just couldn't please both of them. And that happened throughout his presidency, and honestly, that's why he doesn't realize, or that's why he doesn't win when he goes up against Thomas Jefferson. And that's hard to do. I think that was the biggest thing for him in this presidency, was that he couldn't pick one side indefinitely and stick by it, and he tried being nice with both and amicable with both, and it just wasn't working. He didn't have a full set control over that, and people just wanted. It seemed like he got pushed around when it came to this for that both sides. But what I'm going to do right now is going to read some letters from Abigail and him. And I thought those were really, really, really cute. And so here we go. So this one's Philadelphia, July 3rd, 1776. And this is about the Declaration of Independence not being signed that fast. And he's stressing his worries to her about that, how much better it would have been had it been signed. So I'm going to talk about it right now, or read it right now. Had a Declaration of Independence been made 7 months ago, it would have been attended with many great and glorious effects. We might before this hour have formed alliances with foreign states. We should have mastered Quebec and been in possession of Canada. You will perhaps wonder how such a declaration would have influenced our affairs in Canada. But if I could write with freedom, I could easily convince you that it would, and explain to you the manner how. Many gentlemen in high stations and of great influence have been duped by the ministerial bubble of commissioners to treat an unreal sincere expectation of this event, which they so fondly wished had then been slow in liquid in promoting measures of the reduction of the province. Others there in the colonies who really wished that our enterprise in Canada would be defeated, the colonies might be brought into danger and distress between two fires, and be thus induced to submit. Others really wished to defeat the expedition to Canada, at least the conquest of it should elevate the minds of the people too much to hearken to those terms of recanalization, which they believe would be offered us. These jarring views, wishes, and designs occasioned an opposition to many salutary measures which were proposed for the support of the expedition, and caused obstructions, embarrassments, and studied delays, which have finally lost us the province. So he's talking about not being able to get Canada right now, how that would have been great for the United States had they got that, and it just too much delay is happening right now, and he's not too happy about that. And all these causes, however, in conjunction would have disappointed us if it had not been for misfortune, which could not be foreseen and perhaps could not have been prevented. I mean the prevalence of the smallpox among our troops. This fatal pestilence completed our destruction. It is a frown of Providence upon us. We ought to lay to heart. It's crazy how smallpox back then could have just decimated efforts. But on the other hand, the delay of this declaration to this time has many great advantages to it. Attending it, the hopes of recanalization, which were fondly entertained by multitudes of honest and well-meaning, though weak and mistaken people, have been gradually and at last totally extinguished. Time has been given for the whole people maturely to consider the great question of independence, to ripen their judgments despite their fears, and allure their hopes by discussing it in newspapers, pamphlets, by debating it in assemblies, conventions, committees of safety, and expansions in town, county meetings, as well as private conversations. So the whole people in every colony of the 13 now have adopted it as their own act. This will cement the Union and avoid those heats and perhaps convulsions which might have been questioned or occasioned by such declaration 6 months ago. But that day is past. The 2nd of July, 1776, will be most appropriate, most memorable epoch in history of America. It's funny that it doesn't get signed till the 4th, but I am apt to believe that it will be celebrated by succeeding generations that, as a great anniversary festival, it ought to be commemorated as a day of deliverance by solemn acts of devotion to God Almighty. It ought to be solemnized with pomp and parade with shoes, games, sports, guns, bells, bonfires, and illuminations from one end to this content to the other end from this time move forward. You will think me transported with enthusiasm, but I am not. I am well aware of the toil and blood and treasure that will cost us to maintain this declaration and support and defend these states. Yet through all gloom I can see rays of ravishing light and glory. I can see the end is more than worth all that it means. And this posterity with triumph in the days of transaction, even though we should rue it, which I trust in God we shall not. That's a great letter right now, right before Declaration of Independence. He has the foresight to see that this is going to be remembered for the rest of our country's history, and the meaning it's going to have for us in generations to come. And it's funny that what we do on 4th of July is bonfires, fireworks, games, sports, bell, everything. And that's funny that he understood that this will be celebrated that much later, but he doesn't view it right now as that thing, as that great, because he understands that after this happens, after we sign this document, that we're going to have to fight and protect this land, and people are going to die for it. And it's for him to understand that and talk about that. And this is what I find very awesome throughout like his marriage is that women back then weren't, I don't want to say weren't valued, but weren't really talked with about politics with her husband. I feel like that wasn't a big thing. And for the President of the United States to have his wife, he's not present there, but to have his wife included with this much and trust her this much, and for her to talk about it with him is great. But yeah, this is a powerful letter in that he understands what's about to come, but also the great foresight he has from this too is pretty amazing. So I'm going to read another letter from John Adams to his wife, and it's actually just kind of cute. And he goes, "My dearest friends, your letters of the 21, 22, 23, and 26th of April are all before me. They have inspired me with all melancholy in which they were written. Our mother and our niece are gone to rest. The first of the fruit fully ripe, the last but a blossom or a bud. I have suffered for you as much as you have suffered, but I could give you no aid or amusement or comfort. I pray God that these dispensations may be forever good. My mother, countenance and conversation was source of enjoyment to me. That is now dried up forever at Quincy. Our ancestors are gone. Our ancestors are now all gone. We are to follow them very soon to a country where there will be no war or rumor of war, no envy, jealousy, rivalry, or party. You and I are now entering a new scene which will be most difficult and least agreeable in any of our lives. I hope the burden will be lighter on both of us. And when we come together. I am, as long as life lasts, your ever affectionate John Adams." That is beautiful. I think that's awesome. How no one really talks like that anymore. And I just, these are letters. There's tons of letters online, and they're actually really fascinating to read, and they're great. And I think that was a great thing for him to go to when he was having such a hard time in his presidency, was that to have a wife like that to really understand. And she was kind of a solution with all this. But this is all I have, and thank you for listening to me. Have a good day.